Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? I'm hanging in. Before I even begin anything, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I appreciate it. It helps me out. It helps get this info out. My prayers are with everybody in New Orleans tonight who was affected by that tornado that ripped through the lower 9th Ward. Also, Mississippi and Alabama got hit by a lot of tornadoes, and now Birmingham, Alabama is getting slammed by flash flooding. Like unprecedented amounts of rain is hitting there. So I hope any of the viewers who are in those storm paths, I am praying for you. I'm sending you love and light. And again, those people that were affected in Texas the other day, also sending my prayers to all of you who might be subscribers, might not, but if you catch this, I'm really thinking about you. I've been watching the weather all day, and my heart and everything within me is going to you and whoever is affected. It's bad. I'm sending that love and light to you guys. It is Granada Treaty, Project Serpo time. I found some articles that I'm going to read. Again, I'm going to put a lot of my input in on both because a lot of it was confirmed in Elena Danaan's book. And Laura Eisenhower, who I also follow, the great granddaughter of Eisenhower, things were confirmed via Val Thor about the Granada Treaty. A lot. Now, a lot of people do or don't listen to Elena Danaan, and it's fine. I feel within me that Eisenhower really didn't sign the Granada Treaty. It was Majestic 12 who did. And some documents are proving that to be true. I don't know. But in all honesty, I don't think a general had much of a choice, as they're all puppets as well. But I do feel that he didn't do it, even though some of the articles may state that he did. I don't believe that he signed anything and would put Americans and the world in harm's way. The military-industrial complex is humongous and is Black operated with Black funds, and that's our tax money being laundered in directions where we're unaware of. And it's been happening for a very long time. A lot of our money that they steal from us illegally goes to these Black projects, sorry. And I mean, who's in control of those projects? The C-Car and the Naboo. So if you follow her, you don't, it's okay. I honestly believe the contents in her book. So I'll drop the link down below where you can find her book on that topic. Although I wish I could read from it, but getting anybody to answer emails, I'm just a small little flame burning through the night sky. So this article is from www.inquisitor.com/Gray Alien Signed Treaty with Eisenhower in 1954. And I'll drop that link down below. Bees. Okay, here we go. Great aliens signed treaty with Eisenhower in 1954 after U.S. government rejected overtures from Nordic or Palladian aliens say conspiracy theorists. I wish I had made my tinfoil hat. John Thomas Didymus. President Dwight Eisenhower had a secret meeting with extraterrestrial visitors during the early hours of February 21st, 1954, while on vacay in Palm Springs in California, according to UFO and alien conspiracy theorists. He went missing after he was whisked away secretly to Edwards Air Force Base. It was not seen until he appeared at a church service in Los Angeles the next Sunday morning. The official explanation of his mysterious disappearance was that he had to undergo an emergency dental surgery, which I listened to a podcast not too long ago that said that was the truth, that he really did have an issue with a tooth that he did go and get fixed. But there was other stuff that he had to do. The abrupt disappearance of the president was so unusual that it fueled speculation about an illness or death in the media. The speculation became so intense that rumors had to be dispelled by the president's press secretary, James Haggerty, who told Incredibus reporters at a press conference that Eisenhower had damaged a tooth cap while eating fried chicken and had to undergo emergency surgery, which is true. But strange rumors began spreading following information leaked by well-placed sources. The rumors agreed that the local dentist was used to provide Eisenhower with the cover story while he rendezvously secretly with an extraterrestrial visitor at Edwards Air Force Base. Significantly, there are no records at the Eisenhower Library, which reportedly has extensive records related to Eisenhower's health, that he never went under dental surgery in 1954, according to UFO researcher William Moore. Eisenhower thus became the first American president to have direct contact with extraterrestrials. I don't know about that. According to theorists, the meeting took place at Edwards Air Force Base in Southern California during the early hours of February 21st in 1954. It was the first in a series of meetings that culminated in the signing of a treaty between the U.S. government and extraterrestrial race called the Greys. The first contact meeting, as it is termed in UFO conspiracy theory circles, involved with some intrigue. Eisenhower's secret first contact meeting on February 21st, 1954 is believed to have been with Nordic aliens, also known as Palladian aliens, an advanced extraterrestrial race from the Pleiades star cluster, with distinctive Nordic appearance, such as fine hair, blue eyes, and white skin. So I'm going to put a pause on the article. I do believe that he was met with not just the Nordics, but with also the Venusians, because Val Thor is a Venusian. And Galactic Federation also he's a part of. So it could have been the Federation. I have a lot of creaking going in my house, guys, so if I look off, I'm just making sure I don't need to sage. Okay, back to the article. According to UFO conspiracy theorists, several pieces of circumstantial evidence add to support claims that Eisenhower administration held first contact meetings with extraterrestrial beings. The first circumstantial evidence was the awkward manner in which Eisenhower disappeared during the night of February 20th through the 21st in the midst of an unscheduled winter vacation in Palm Springs, California, and the clumsy efforts by officials to explain his disappearance. One of the first eyewitnesses' testimonies came from Gerald Light, a writer and leading member of the community dedicated to metaphysical research. A letter circulated widely in the UFO and community, dated on my birthday, dated April 16th, 1954, although I was not born back then, is alleged to have been written by Gerald Light in Mead Lane, director of Borderland Sciences Research Foundation. In the letter, Light allegedly claimed to have been one of a group of community leaders who was present at the first contact meeting with extraterrestrials at Edwards Air Force Base. The group of community leaders included Edwin Norris, President Truman's chief economic advisor, Cardinal James Francis McIntyre, head of the Catholic Church in Los Angeles at the time, and 80-year-old Franklin Winthrop Allen, a former reporter with the Hearst newspaper group. Hearst, I think that is. Light claimed in the letter he allegedly wrote to Lane that he recently reported from Murdoch Airfield, now Edwards Air Force Base. The letters contain a single reference to Etherians, presumed to be the aliens, and it includes a comment above 5 separate and distinct types of aircraft being studied and handled by Air Force officials, with the assistance and permission of the Etherians. Interesting article. It was cut off there. A lot of other corroborating stories say very similar things to that, if not exactly to that, because I think they're trying to keep the story straight. This is from awalnews.weebly.com. Again, I'm going to drop the links down below. 1954 Granada Treaty between the US and the Gray Aliens, or the Alien Greys. Since the 1950s, members of the Sikh still had a conscious and relayed alien events to American people via Hollywood movies. Hollywood was a tool to warn the people of the world. Earth versus Flying Saucers, 1956. The Granada Treaty was signed by the then President-elect Dwight Eisenhower. According to the testimonies examined so far, the February 20 through the 21st of 1954 meeting was not successful, and the extraterrestrials were spurned due to their refusal to enter into technology exchanges and insistence on nuclear disarmament by the US and presumably other major world powers. Yep. Cooper describes the circumstances of a subsequent agreement that was reached after the failure of the first meeting. While Cooper has a different version of dates and times for the 1954 meetings, he agrees that there were 2 sets of meetings involving different extraterrestrials meeting with President Eisenhower or Eisenhower administration officials. Much better. Back in 1954, under the Eisenhower administration, the federal government decided on the night and early hours of February 20th through the 21st, 1954, while on a vacation to Palm Springs, California, President Dwight Eisenhower went missing and allegedly was taken to Edwards Air Force Base for a secret meeting. When he showed up the next morning at a church service in Los Angeles, reporters were told that he had an emergency dental treatment the previous evening and had visited a local dentist. The dentist later appeared at a function that evening and presented as the dentist who had treated Eisenhower. The missing night and morning was subsequently fueled rumors that Eisenhower was using the alleged dentist visit as a cover story for an extraordinary event. The event is possibly the most significant that any American president could have conducted, an alleged first contact meeting with extraterrestrials at Edwards Air Force Base, previously Murdoch Airfield, and the beginning of a series of meetings with different extraterrestrial races that led to a treaty that was eventually signed. This astonishing first contact event, if it occurred, will experience its 50th anniversary on February 21st, 2004. The paper explores the evidence that the first contact meeting had occurred with extraterrestrials with a distinctive Nordic appearance, the likelihood of an agreement having been spun with the Nordic race. That start of a series of meetings that led to a treaty eventually being signed with a different extraterrestrial race dubbed the Greys, and the motivations of different extraterrestrial races involved in these treaty discussions. The paper will further examine why these events were kept secret for so long, the significance of the 50th anniversary of Eisenhower's meeting with extraterrestrials, and whether an official disclosure announcement is likely in the near future. So what came out of that treaty? Eisenhower was met by the Nordics to tell him to stop the nonsense with the nuclear weapons, because they knew if those weapons were used, it was going to shift everything and destroy timelines, dimensions, and densities that cohabitate in our sphere, aka firmament, aka toroidal field, aka the multiverse, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has their own thing for the planes of existence. Now, we know when I did the Anunnaki series, the Greys and the Seekar took over a lot when the Anunnaki high bolted out. So then we have to ask ourselves, well, then why are they've always been here, they've resided here, they've been controlling everything since the dawn of existence, then why all of a sudden is this treaty here and them meeting? I believe, just as my opinion, that they're coming, the different groups saw that we are now technologically at that point in time in history, technologically building and growing more of technology, arms, and other advances in technology, that they wanted a piece of that pie, and they saw the advantage of slipping in, but more directly instead of behind the scenes, through the hive mind and through shape-shifting and through them just doing everything from upstairs or from the moon or from Mars. So I feel that they came down to infiltrate us more so in a more open capacity. And with that Majestic 12 signing, it wasn't Eisenhower, because Eisenhower definitely did not want nuclear weapons. I'm sure as a general, he knew the damaging effects of what that was going to do. And I'm sure he watched that play out. What that really did was set up grounds for an infiltration. They really didn't give technology to us. What they did was build underground bases. Dumbs. They went underground. They started up genetic labs and cloning labs, and this is all around the world. They opened up a bigger community for the extraterrestrials that were here to harm us in having a place to stay, a place to land their ships. And this is like China Lake, Dulce, Pine Gap, other notorious places in and around this planet that they started inhibiting. Because it wasn't just the United States. And of course, we have a lot of dumps in this country that are very slowly now being deconstructed and blown up, flooded, and ripped away. That was the start of it all. And then as time went on and they grew in their force and the treaty kept being honored, Val Thor came after the treaty was signed to talk with Eisenhower and trying to help convince, and I'm sure other presidents had more involvement, but after Kennedy, they all sided with the Greys and the CCAR. Just an FYI, up until 45. Just saying. Here's my co-host, Miss Morgan Cat. So yeah, they came, they talked a lot to Eisenhower, the Nordics, the good, the benevolent, not the evil Palladians. There's two factions. Just like the Greys, there's a lot of factions. I showed you some pics. So I believe a lot of that started to happen even more. They came in, they infiltrated, they started their infiltration in agendas way before then, but they needed the United States because we are the military hold of the world. She's being bad. Yeah. So I do believe going through up until the 80s, a lot of really bad things were being done underneath us. And then comes the space program in the 1960s. And then here we come, super secret space programs. And then here we go, the 20 and back programs, more abductions, more crazy stuff. I spoke about it the last episode. Not good. Not good. So that's really, in a nutshell, what the Granada Treaty is. They signed a treaty basically letting these Greys come, infiltrate humanity, abduct, take people, do genetic experiments. And they just didn't do it right off the bat. They did it, but they waited until things were more advanced technologically. And we saw the big boom with how fast from the 1960s, even the 80s, we started to see like video games started coming out. And then in the early 90s, the computer started to come out. More and more technology starting to take its pivotal shift up. And then in the 2000s, we have, you could burn CDs and cell phones. And then going up, I mean, now everything is on the pinnacle point of making a bigger shift again. So, I mean, are they still abducting? but they're not on Earth. They're coming in and they're zipping out the windows. But yes, now we're going to read about Project Serpo. And this is from techland.time.com, Cryptids, Project Serpo by Doug Hemeth. Project Serpo details what apparently happened after the famous Roswell crash in 1947. Ever see Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Apparently that's similar to what happened in the Serpo case, which details a story of exchange programs set up to send 12 of our people to the homeland, the home planet of the aliens who crashed in New Mexico desert. According to the account, it is reported that after President Ronald Reagan watched a special screening of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he privately spoke to Steven Spielberg and said, "You don't know how true this really is." The Serpo story is supposedly told by anonymous retired US government employees and military personnel. It goes something like this. Some inhabitants of a planet called Serpo apparently crashed their aircraft in 2 separate New Mexico locations. As for Roswell, it occurred, but not like the storybooks tell. There were 2 crash sites, one southwest of Corona, New Mexico, and the second site at Pelona Peak, south of Datil, New Mexico. According to the account, all of the beings died except for one, who was found hiding behind a rock. The entity was given water but declined food. The entity was later transferred to Los Alamos. This entity had a working communications device that it used to make contact with its home planet, Serpo, and eventually died in 1952. According to the story, an exchange program was set up some years later. A meeting date was set for April 1964 near Alamogordo, New Mexico. The aliens landed and retrieved the bodies of their dead comrades. Information was exchanged. Communication was in English. The aliens had a translation device. In 1965, we had an exchange program with the aliens. We carefully selected 12 military personnel, 10 men and 2 women. They were trained, vetted, and carefully removed from the military system. The 12 were skilled in various specialties. Near the northern part of the Nevada test site, the atomic bombs, the aliens landed and the 12 Americans left. One entity was left on Earth. The original plan was for our 12 people to stay 10 years and then return to Earth. The entire story is outlined in great detail on serpo.org, with over 70 different entries by various anonymous officials involved with the project. There's some thoroughly documented scientific data about the supposed planet and how we were able to get there, background information on its inhabitants and their culture, and details listed of the equipment and technology involved with the project. We'll probably never know whether the story is true or not, but it's a fascinating read if you're into this kind of stuff. There's even a graphic novel out now, too, although it's apparently a bit more sensational than the original written accounts. This next article is from politics/prose.com. Documents how 12 people, as part of a top secret US government program, traveled to the planet Serpo and lived there for 13 years. Based on the debriefing of Serpo team and the diary of the expedition's commander, explains how the aliens helped us reverse engineer the anti-gravity spacecraft and develop technology to solve our planet-wide energy problems. Reveals how our government has an ongoing relationship with Serpo aliens. On July 16, 1965, a massive alien spacecraft from Zeta Reticuli star system landed on the Nevada test site north of Las Vegas. Following a plan set in motion by President Kennedy in 1962, the alien visitors known as the Ebens welcomed 12 astronaut-trained military personnel aboard their craft for the 10-month journey to their home planet Serpo, 39 light years away. In November 2005, former and current members of the Defense Intelligence Agency, directed by Kennedy, to organize the Serpo exchange program came forward to reveal the operation, including details from a 3,000-page debriefing of the 7 members of the Serpo team who returned after 13 years on the planet. Working with the originators of the Serpo project and the diary kept by the expedition's commanding officer, Len Carson, chronicles the complete journey of these cosmic pioneers, including their remarkable stories of a life on a alien planet, superluminal space travel, and advanced knowledge of alien technologies. He reveals how the Ebens presented the U.S. with the Yellow Book, a complete history of the universe recorded holographically, allowing the reader to view actual scenes from prehistory to the present. He explains how the Ebens helped us reverse engineer the anti-gravity spacecraft and develop technology to solve our planet-wide energy problems, knowledge still classified. I do have the Yellow Book, which after this article, if I have it on, then I'm going to read. So stay tuned. Exposing the truth of a human-alien interaction and interplanetary travel, Carson reveals not only the Ebens have returned to Earth 8 times, but also that our government continues to have ongoing relationship with them, a relationship with potential to advance the human race into the future. Okay, that was the end of that. There is a video circulating somewhere, I think it's on TikTok, of a military officer debriefing soldiers about the different alien races. And he talked about this project. So if you're on there, go look for it. I don't have TikTok yet. So this is from the Yellow Book, The History of the Aliens on Earth. I might read this more in depth in another alien discussion. So this says, so who are the Ebens? I guess you could say that their technical name is EBEs. Our government referred to them as extraterrestrial biologic entities, but they called themselves Ebens. The Ebens are from the Zeta Reticuli twin star system, Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, and are nearly twin 5th magnitude yellow stars, which are 38.42 light years away. In one instance, the Ebens claim it takes them 91 days to reach Earth from their planet, and another time they claimed it took 9 months. They have space travel capabilities and can venture through space, defying the time barrier. The official Defense Intelligence Agency designation of their planet is Ebens, Planet Serpo, designation Dial P0916, star system Zeta Reticuli. Evidence gleaned from both the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case and from other intelligence sources have suggested that the home of at least one alien, the group of alien visitors to Earth may well be the Zeta Reticuli system. The Ebens planet is similar to Earth, but the air is a bit thinner and contains a higher proportion of argon and helium. Also, the average temperature is a bit cooler, especially in the northern part of their planet. They like our high mountain regions, where the air is thinner and the temperature is cooler. They can't stand a lot of heat. Maybe this explains a number of alien underground bases in places like Mount Shasta, Siberia, and the Himalayas. These Ebens are creatures about 3 foot 4 inches to 3 foot 8 inches tall. Their eyes are extremely large, almost insect style, with a couple of different inner lids. Their skin structure is very elastic and hard, probably hardened from the sun. So just to show you, this is what I just read. This is the Eben right there. Text on the Ebens revealed by retired U.S. government employee in 2005. He claims, I won't go into any great details about my past, but I was involved in a special program. There's a really interesting picture. As for Roswell, it occurred, but not like the storybooks tell. There were 2 crash sites, one southwest of Corona, New Mexico, and the second site at Pelona Peak, south of Datil, New Mexico. The crash involved 2 extraterrestrial aircraft. The Corona site was found a day later by an archaeological team. This team reported the crash site in the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department. A deputy arrived the next day and summoned a state police officer. One live entity, EBE, was found hiding behind a rock. The entity was given water but declined food. The entity was later transferred to Los Alamos. The information went to Roswell Army Airfield. The site was examined and all evidence was removed. The bodies were taken to Los Alamos National Laboratory because they had a freezing system that allowed the bodies to remain frozen for research. The craft was taken to Roswell and then on to Wright Field, Ohio. The second site was not discovered until August 1949 by 2 ranchers. They reported their findings several days later to the sheriff of Catron County, New Mexico. Because of the remote location, it took the sheriff several days to make his way to the crash site. Once at the site, the sheriff took photographs and then drove back to Datil. Sanda Army Base, Albuquerque, New Mexico, was then notified. A recovery team from Sandia took custody of all evidence, including 6 bodies. The bodies were taken to Sandia Base, but later transferred to Los Alamos. The live entity established communications with us and provided us with the location of his home planet. The entity remained alive until 1952 when he died, but before his death, he provided us with a full explanation of the items found inside the 2 crafts. One item was a communication device. The entity was allowed to make contact with his planet. Somehow, I never knew this information, but a meeting date was set for April 1964 near Alamo, Greada, New Mexico. The aliens landed and retrieved the bodies of their dead. Information was exchanged. Communication was in English. This is basically the article that I just read. So they definitely cited this. But going back near the northern part of the Nevada test site, the aliens landed and 12 Americans left. 1 entity was left on Earth. The original plan was for 12 people to stay 10 years and then return to Earth. But something went wrong. The 12 remained until 1978. 8 returned, 2 having died on Serpo and 2 having chosen to remain, according to the returnees. Of the 8 that returned, all have died. The last survivor died in 2002. The returnees were isolated from 1978 until 1984 at various military installations. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations was responsible for their security and safety. They also conducted debriefing sessions with the returnees. Why the Ebens came to Earth. The Ebens claim that when they first came to Earth, they were involved in the genetic experimentation of Earth humans and used alien biogenetic engineering to create present-day Homo sapiens. These Ebens then left, and there is some confusion as to how often they returned. There is mention about returning 2,000 years ago, and we know that they returned in the early 40s, setting up a base in northern New Mexico. In 1947, 2 of their spacecrafts crashed in southern New Mexico. We discovered them, and this began a fascinating relationship with the Ebens. Alien hybrid genetically altered aliens related to the Ebens. It gets complicated when you try to compare these genetically altered creatures. The Ebens have created several different breeds of genetically altered creatures. These hepaloids have also created several different genetically altered creatures. Some are hybrid mixtures. That is why it is so complicated to try to fully understand all the different alien races. And it gets even a lot more complicated than that. Not only have the Ebens created a hybrid race, which are gray in color, but the tarantuloids also created a gray race of hybrids. Tarantuloids? Insectoids would have been better. Thinking about a tarantula-looking being. Yeeps. As long as they're good, that's okay. I'm going to share a screen. This is an EBE. Right here. Freaky. EBE-1 was found in the Roswell crash site near Corona, New Mexico. He was slightly hurt and quickly recovered from his wounds. He was a mechanic. He was able to communicate through pictures with Army personnel. They had placed him in an isolation room in Roswell Army Airfield. Then in September 1947, he was transferred to Kirtland Field and was again isolated in a medical unit. During this time, the EBE-1 worked with top military linguistics. They were able to communicate with him by showing him photographs. They later developed symbols to communicate words. In linguistics, these are known as logograms or logographs. Eventually, EBE-1 was able to utilize these symbols to communicate his wants and needs. He was able to eat simple foods such as bread, fruits, pasta, salads, and cheese. However, meats caused him problems and he would vomit the meats. He was examined by numerous medical doctors and scientists. They took skin samples, examined his body fluids, and conducted x-rays on him. They found that he had one primary organ that worked as his heart and lungs. That was a combined organ. He had a simple digestive system. One organ worked as a stomach and one other organ worked as his intestines. They could find no liver, pancreas, or gallbladder. Apparently, EBE-1's stomach acted as all these organs or just didn't need them. He had small glands on his hands, arms, and legs. His glands would enlarge at certain times. Scientists could not figure out what these glands were for nor their use. EB-1 measured 4 foot 3 inches tall and weighed 60 pounds. His height never varied, however, his height did. During the winter months, his height would increase by only 1 inch. His body generated heat by some means that scientists could not determine. He wore a tight-fitting one-piece suit. The suit was all he needed to maintain his correct body heat. The suit was made of an elastic material that retained warmth and kept out cold. His body temperature was 101 degrees, almost never varied. He was provided with a blanket, but he rarely used it. His blood was light red and contained similar cells to humans, such as red and white blood cells. This blood also contained numerous things our scientists couldn't identify. His body did not require a large quantity of water or fluids. He was able to extract the fluids required to maintain his proper levels through the breakdown of food. His body was able to somehow determine the correct amount of fluids required and eliminated the remaining unused fluids. It was determined that eating was not a pleasurable activity for him, but rather just a necessity. EBE-1 was always calm, kind, and very considerate. He never got excited, rude, nor was mean-spirited. He was very social, even though he couldn't understand others around him. He liked to touch people and learned that holding a human hand was a common social practice. He was very docile. Even the scientists were poking and examining him. He seemed to understand as he just let them go about their business. He was always willing to communicate or attempt to communicate. He quickly learned the symbols, systems, and eventually learned our language in a very simple way. In 1950, EBE-1 was moved to a special facility created for him at Los Alamos National Laboratory. He lived in a 3-room apartment. His handler, who was assigned to him in 1949, joined him and lived with him in an apartment. They became such great companions that neither wanted to separate. It was found that he could not speak our language because of a lack of vocal cords in his throat. The Ebens communicate via tonal inflections amongst themselves. A brilliant doctor developed a device that was implanted into EBE-1's throat, which allowed him to speak English. Although crude, he was able to speak simple sentences and to eventually communicate through English to his handler. During the entire time EBE-1 was alive, he had medical problems. He developed a rash on his body that irritated him. Several different medicines were tried and eventually the rash went away. He developed a cough that seemed to be connected to a food allergy. They found that certain fruits would cause the cough. Eventually the cough subsided, but he was left with a sore throat. EBE-1 was shown the items recovered in Roswell crash. He was able to teach us how to utilize the communication and energy devices. We also found a medical kit, which contained small injectable tubes. He didn't know what each item was for, but he explained that they were for injuries. Scientists experimented and determined that each tube contained a chemical substance. Not knowing what they were cautious not to use them on him for fear they would do more harm than good. No rescue mission was able to be launched for EBE-1 because the only 2 Eben crafts that were near Earth crashed. He did say they sent a distress signal to planet Serpo, but it would take at least 9 months for the nearest rescue craft to reach them. He died in 1952 at Los Alamos, and his body, along with those of his crewmates, were returned to the Ebens in 1964 during the meeting in New Mexico. The Eben craft was stored in Ohio and then moved to Nevada. It is believed to be at the Nevada test site. So that's really cool. I'm just reading through a bunch of this. So yeah, that's a little bit of the EBE story of what they are. But I don't necessarily feel it was only that groups, being that we moved our own people to that planet and 2 might still be alive there. And we have no recognition, no word, maybe in a classified document, of their knowings of doings on planet Serpo. I don't believe these I mean, the description of EBE1 doesn't seem evil or horrible, and they're all geneticists in their own right, and I don't think they were doing us any harm. So I don't believe that this race of grays were bad, in my opinion. Other races that look like them, perhaps, but they're not the Mitra, the Killy-Tokered, or the other grays, the tall whites, that are not fun. Not fun at all. And I don't know if the Ebens were connected with the Dracos. It doesn't seem like they were. But the ones that did drop and leave their craft, they taught us a lot. And it kind of showed us that we're not alone in the universe. And no matter what you think about Eisenhower or this project that happened, it was bound to happen. We're bound to find this out. I think they were trying to help us understand that we're not alone. We were never alone. And there are more heinous things that we need to be concerned about. But this is another reason why the government hides a lot of these projects. Like, we all know about Roswell, but again, it's not what you're told. It's what they want you to know. And that's propaganda. It's propaganda. And they make these people that witness these things sign non-disclosure agreements so that they don't speak, and they can never speak, because if they do, they're done. We're coming to an age of time, in my opinion, that yes, as humans, we really do need to be careful to recognize the purest of good and the purest of evil of any beings. Because they're so technologically advanced, because a lot of them are in higher densities than we are, they know a lot more of information. Many of them are from our future, coming back into our past to help us. I agree with that. I do believe there's intervention right now happening, that they got rid of these grays off of Mars, off of Deimos and Phobos, off of the moon, and the sea cars off of all those planets. But it doesn't mean that the Death Star doesn't exist, and I'm sure it does to some capacity. We have Space Force, who right now we are being told is doing the cybersecurity stuff, but that's they do a lot more than that. And I know everybody who watches these types of videos already know a lot of what they do. I have a lot of buzzing in my ear, guys. There's a lot of stuff. I might read this is a very long portion of the EBAN stuff, so I will definitely continue on the next episode on reading the rest of this, because I do want to get into not necessarily these books, but what they do to people. I mean, this little EBE1 sounded like a lot like E.T. the movie. Predictive programming, guys. But I do want to touch into some elements of the abduction books, because I believe those were of the evil people, the evil races. I want people to understand that it's in your free will to not give these little shits consent and to say, oh, I'm a sovereign being. I don't consent to anything you want to do to me. Nope, and they can't. So be mindful of that. As for Project Serpo, very interested in knowing if those other two military astronaut personnel are still alive and if what they're up to. And maybe one day we'll find out the tales of their journey and why they wanted to stay and why they didn't want to come back. That I would find very interesting. I wonder what they eat there. I wonder like what accommodations they have. And if they, I mean, if it's not the same air, did they get used to it? Did they morph? Did they change? Very interesting material. One can only think and one can only hope that we'll find that information out one day. I would love to know. It's like the movie Contact. But yeah, I feel like those articles covered a lot. I know Elena Danaan's book covers a whole lot. We Will Never Let You Down. And the forward is by Lauren Eisenhower. This is a story. It's not a story, it's real. Of Elena meeting Valdor and talk to him about the treaty. Talk to him about Eisenhower's involvement. What Majestic 12 did and why did he come and try to help Eisenhower out, and what he's been doing since to helping humans on Earth get their shit together and help stop this crazy infiltration that we see happening literally in our times. I just want to show pictures. So before I end, I don't know what you guys are seeing or not, but that's Valiant Thor. That's like Valiant Thor. That is Valiant Thor. That is not a human. That's a Venusian. I mean, there's a ton of pictures of this man. Looks normal. So think about Valiant Thor, right? Think about this guy who came from Venus, part of the Galactic Federation. And I'm sorry, that looks like Bjorn Ironside from the Vikings. I'm not joking, that really does. That really does. That looks like Alexander Ludwig. Wow. Yeah, these are just some pictures off of Google's. I don't believe that's Valiant Thor. But yeah, that's him. That really does look like Alexander Ludwig. I'm not joking. You know, I do have a theory about the Nordics and Odin and Thor and them being the Norse gods were the Palladians who came at the same time, the Anunnaki came, and then the avians, the blue avians were, and there's some other races that went to India. And this is how you got your stories from those two different spots on the planet, talking and coming up with very similar expressions of how the earth began, and the 9 chakras, and then the 9 places of the tree of life, Yggdrasil, Asgard, and then Muspelheim, and then the layers in between, and we're at Midgard, the Rainbow Bridge. They have flying chariots. Very similar stories in 2 separate places that they didn't get to until the Silk Road and later on in Viking time. But when these things did occur, this is where the gods concept comes from, in my opinion. And I think the Nordics took Scandinavia and other races took down. I think the Anunnaki took the Middle East. And there are other races that have been here since the dawn of time. So still configuring all that stuff out. I am, at least. But I really find that correlation very interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think. Again, that's just my opinion. I speculate because I see a lot of reading a lot of those texts and the mythology, which I don't think is mythology. It's more valid than I could ever think. But I feel that stuff did occur. Please write down your comments. I'd love to hear them. I'd love to read them. I'm not crazy. I know a lot of you listen and feel very similar. Again, you can't believe everything you read. You can't believe a lot of things because, again, everything's been infiltrated. A lot of things have been infiltrated, and a lot of the information that we find sometimes has been infiltrated. So please keep a lot of that in mind. I try to remind my religious viewers on a lot of the other books that I do readings on. Can't believe everything. But my temporal hack goes on because I believe this Project Serpo definitely happened and the Granada Treaty definitely happened, and you just not signed by Eisenhower. I wouldn't believe that. Otherwise, I don't think Val Thor would have been friends with Eisenhower. Do not think in a heartbeat that he would have came down to help Eisenhower in any way, shape, or form if that wasn't true. So, just saying. So I hope you enjoyed that episode 5 of the Granada Treaty and Project Serpo. Mr. Mitra, I have to see if I can draw an Eben. We'll see. Yes, I drew this. I'll see if I can draw an Eben, because I think they're cute. Not as scary as this guy. But I'm sending each and every one of you love and light. Again, to everybody who's been affected by the weather in Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, even in Arkansas, Georgia and Florida. You won't have it that bad, but still, my prayers go out to all of you. I can't imagine what people are going through right now. Houses were ripped up. People were without power. My prayers go out to everybody. Sincerely. If you like my content and my work, please consider helping me out. A like, a share, a subscribe. Also, I don't want this to be my last month or 2 months of being able to continue doing these videos. Please consider contributing to the mandate commie New York clause of help Allison feed herself and pay her bills. I really appreciate it. Anything counts, and it's very helpful. Love and light to everybody. I'll see you on episode 6. We'll continue reading that yellow book, and we'll go into some abduction fun. Until next time, guys, have a good day. Bye.